Well, glad you got something out of it.
Yeah, I like things blowing up.
And like a Donkey Kongs. Well,
and of course, that little news bit is sandwiched in between news about the nuclear power plants in Japan.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's a good place for it. Well, even if you were to share, I can't even see your camera now because all the other programs are over it.
Are you figuring it out?
No, I just barely hit go on it. I'm not figuring it out. I figured it out.
Oh.
You know, but this is like all editable stuff if need be. Also. So, I guess what a good topic is what? Enlightenment. Oh, now
it
you're...
just gives me a sickly feeling in my stomach, to be honest. Like, I have a visceral reaction to that word, and it's not a good one. It makes me actually really sad when I hear people talk about that. When Ellen, before when she used to talk about it, but I know that her actual path of pursuit isn't towards this sort of imagined state of nirvana. It makes me sad to think that people want to eliminate certain emotional states out of their being, you know, it just seems really tragic. But they don't, like, for a while, Ellen was just, like I said, she didn't want misery anymore in her life. Like, she didn't want to be miserable, she didn't want to be angry anymore. You know, those are certainly nice things to wish for yourself, but it's the elimination of that just seems really tragic and sad. Because it's such an important part of our existence, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, do you think that it's a temporary loss, meaning this idea that someone's able to eliminate it entirely? I mean, they would, you know, if the idea that enlightenment is becoming a Teflon Don, then, you know, I think that I don't know, like that just sounds like a cloister, you know, like someone's just shutting themselves off from emotion that would eventually come back and get them.
Well, see, that's definitely another layer that gets put on there. You know, if you're like intentionally withdrawing yourself from this, you're not only purposefully avoiding the subject, but and missing out on a whole realm of personal self-exploration. But who can't actually avoid that? You know. But I don't know. I imagine that people, you know, play mind games continuously with themselves, like you had proposed earlier with the negative mind games, you know? Like maybe they're just perpetually caught up in this positive reinforcement mind game, so maybe they could perpetually be subsumed in this state of goodness, you know?
My negative mind game isn't, when I say negative, I just mean negate the topic, and then keep negating, you know, the topic at hand, and then negate the talking at hand, and then negate the thought that's going through your mind, meaning stop the thought. Like, if you catch yourself thinking, then stop. And I think that that's like a process to getting to a particular mindset. But I know what you mean in terms of like trying to remain like, you know, negative in terms of optimism and pessimism. You know, that.
Yes, what you're saying is an exact principle that you could apply towards this. Like, I wonder if that's a meditative technique that maybe is taught in temples, you know, the same one that you're talking about, like negating thoughts, you know.
Yeah, I wonder about that. Let me think.
But there's kind of the flip side of what's the opposite of negate?
Like promote, maybe.
Oh, okay. So you're promoting every single thought that comes into your head?
Well, yeah, that would be like the eventual outcome, is where after so much negation and stopping the mind and stealing it, then you would get a flood of everything. And meaning where everything becomes as equally prevalent as everything else. So that you're not filtering rationality and putting rationality in the forefront of your mind. And then if you're not always trying to think rationally because you're afraid of being nuts, then then it will allow, greater imagination, but it also could lead to, a paralysis for a while. And I think a lot of people that suffer from, mental change-ups and changes, paralysis is one effect. Like when I was living in Seattle, and had shaved my head and eyebrows and everything, I felt that was a real shutting down time. That's when figure background relationship was being challenged. After you negate things verbally, then you start to, you can negate them visually. You start to challenge the idea of what is in front of what in your visual field, and try to bring yourself away from a three-dimensional reality, or a three-dimensional perspective of thinking, into a two-dimensional perspective of thinking. Kind of like, blinking a lot.
Right.
Yeah, like multiple frames, still frames. But I mean, that's why I was wondering if she reached enlightenment, what is this attempted enlightenment? What does she think it would look like? And if you say it's just the removal of misery, then I think, wow, that's not. I think that's a fine goal. I do think there's a certain degree of enlightenment that comes with the idea of having removed, not like in the in the Mormon way, just do good, be good, but to absent yourself from things that you're not, that you don't want to, you don't want to look back and say, wow, I produced all this negative baggage, to not surround yourself with a bunch of negativity. But that's also, I think, culturally, I think, there's so many people that are politically correct now that, they don't only, they're tentative about smoking on camera, they're tentative about swearing on camera, they're, anything, how they look, what they say, they're worried about the scrutiny of other people based on some value system that they've inherited. Anyway, so that I'm curious of where she's from and, where she's at. But she seemed pretty put together when I talked to her.
Oh, yeah. Well, I think she's in a really, really, really great and interesting place right now, because before she definitely had an idea of where this whole process was leading. Like, she did have an idea of what enlightenment was, and it was based on people that she had met, right? And the idea of what she had wanted for herself. But lately that's melted away. Like, she has no prognosis, I don't know if that's the right word, for what the future, her own personal future, has in store for her, beyond just being something different than, maybe not even different. Like, I don't even know if there's a separation. Like, she's really she's at an interesting point now where it could possibly be anything different than what she is, It's still not quite settled. She's definitely not settled on anything. In fact, she's at we actually even talked about this process of de-evolution, of going to a personal de-evolution, like ungrading, unwinding all of your conceptions of existence, So.
But you mean de-evolution, like trying, instead of highbrow, go lowbrow, instead of the high mind, go to the animalia mind?
Yeah, in a way, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, well, that's the thing that blows me away, is that more people I don't know, after I read Joseph Campbell and just got that whole idea of a mythos, I saw that just blew the doors off of my mind. And what I'm realizing is that so many people are caught up in, they inherit a religious mythos that they've never had a tradition of inheriting, or finding their own, or making their own up, and living in it, like, I'm just arbitrarily going to believe this and emphasize these thoughts. And that's why I think academia functions as a substitute mythology, personal mythology, in one respect. I'm not trying to say that's what education is, but I think a lot of people get caught up in a notion, like somebody was, were commenting on reality and trying to define reality, and I'm not in denial of what we call a common ground, but I'm not in favor of trying to maintain the idea either.
Sure, yeah.
But, I don't know. That's why I want to point, I keep thinking everybody is ultimately, their perception of the world is so hugely different, and you'll get realists or objectivists saying, still look at what's common to all of us. Like, people don't generally float above the ground; they walk on the ground. They don't get much higher than a couple feet off the ground when they jump. Like, there's still gravity. There's still this real thing here. I remember, like, John Glenn. I think I might have introduced you to him in L.A. The English guy, and he used to talk about meditation or levitation, and I deny that he was able to levitate because he had a swami that was trying to train him to levitate, and he got so mad at me. He's like, "How do you fucking know?" Did you ever see the Chomsky Michael Foucault argument on YouTube?
No.
Well, God, what was I going to compare that to? Well, when I first saw it, I thought that Chomsky had just whipped the crap out of Michael Foucault, and then later on I looked at it and I thought Michael Foucault had really beat the crap out of Chomsky. Anyway, what's going on in your background there?
Oh, did you hear the megaphone?
Oh, is that outside?
Yeah. That was just someone driving by.
Oh, really? Yeah.
But don't you find that interesting that you watch one video and you get one perspective, and then you watch another and you get a totally different perspective, and you're convinced of both, the rightness of both, depending on the context of when and where you saw it? Doesn't that ever mystify you? That mystifies me.
It mystifies me like the spinning ballerina or the duck rabbit, image that switches up on you.
That's an oddity.
On those pixelated fractals that you have to focus in different areas to see them. Sure, I mean, but and that's what makes me, and then I think some people never see anything in those pixelated images. They're not capable of doing it.
Or they only see one thing.
Well, the pixelated ones kind of require, yeah, you can, if you look past it, you're going to see it one way. If you look closer to yourself, you're going to see it another way. But it's almost like some people, when I want to say they're incapable, they never claim that they're able to see anything in it.
Right.
But instead of just saying, well, I can only see the rabbit. I can never see the damn duck. But.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is all interesting too, but it's the nature of convictions that I find wrapped up in this that's more compelling. Or, I don't know about more compelling, but a compelling factor.
Yeah, well,
there's this idea of like a belief in what you're experiencing, and it's a profound belief. It's a felt belief. It's a knowing belief,
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, exactly. That people believe what they think. That whole idea, but how, like, it's almost difficult to always run, away from the idea, But that would be part of the breakdown exercises to make certain that you don't maintain a belief about anything.
Well, I'm not so sure about that. I think that I've kind of taken a stance of myself of not correcting it, but go ahead and believing. Mostly I do that because I can't ever seem to convince myself to not believe. I keep falling into the trap. But I also seem to just as easily, and maybe I'm a lucky person, I get reminded of how wrong I am frequently. And maybe that's the element that needs to ride alongside belief is non-belief, Like, I don't think that you can turn off believing, I think you have to believe and you have to not believe at the same time.
Well, that kind of roots the argument into, and like saying in order to not believe, you have to believe something first. And when it comes down to like perspective, I kind of disagree with that. Meaning, I think it's possible. I guess when I talk about animalia or reducing the human mind to empathize with the animal mind, it would have to do with shutting down your thoughts so much so that there's not really a belief as much as there is just a maneuverability in one's environment. As soon as what it is you do is tracked by what it is you're thinking, then then at that point you start to believe something. Like, belief requires the words to go with it. Oh, the perils of being a Muppet. Yeah.
Yeah, but I think that there's a certain, I want to use the word compulsion to justify this belief. Well, it seems like we're trying to safeguard ourselves from believing things because we know that at times we're wrong. Like, let's say that we've achieved some kind of perspective on ourselves where we see that we believe things and that we know that that could change and that we could not believe things so that we've obtained this sort of maneuverability, right? But it seems like...
Wait, I'm not following. Say.
So let's just say that we have achieved this perspective on our own lives, or that there's a person that has achieved this perspective, that they see that they believe in concepts, but they can also see that they can be wrong, that these beliefs are wrong, and that therefore they can become non-beliefs, right? So you understand that, right?
Well, yeah, sure, I think.
Okay. So it seems like there's a lot of emotions that go on with this change. Like, if you really believe something, like if you really believe that there is a God, right? And then someday you believe, and then you come to terms with it, and you say, then you no longer believe that there's a God. You might have this tendency to look back on this time when you believed in God and think that, wow, I was such a fool back then. I'm such an idiot for ever believing that there was a God, and you kind of like beat yourself up over the fact that you believe something, you know?
Uh-huh.
It's that factor that I would really rather try to concentrate on eliminating is it's not so much I love the idea of maneuverability. I think that's what you were getting at, is realizing that you can have belief and you can have not belief, right? And that you can move back and forth between those two states.
Yeah.
But it's the elimination of the guilt or the sort of emotional noise that we create around that, which sort of removes it deadens the actual movement or the experience of believing and not believing. Are you getting it? Is that hitting you at all?
Well, all of it except for the deaded. I think you said the deaded. I'm not certain what you meant, but the change between belief and not belief. You know, the switching point between seeing the duck and the rabbit, or not. You know, not even looking at the frame anymore. You know, I mean, unless you're driving at a particular point, I mean, yeah, I agree. There's a time when, you know, it's like, to me, belief is a thought process, and when that thought's not there, then, you know, you're not believing it, and so you get to turn it off. But it's almost like being able to reactivate a former belief, a former perspective, as opposed to ridiculing it. You know, where you get, well, how could I have believed in a God? I just can't believe I used to believe that. You know, but I'm more open to the idea of, no, go ahead and indulge that idea, try to flesh it out again.
What idea? The ridicule?
Well, in any of it, but flesh out where you were, like try to believe in it again, try to believe in what it was you used to believe.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that. Huh. But the reason Ellen comes up again, and I've thought about this often talking to her, is that she has, like I told you, she wants less misery in her life, and she wants to be less angry, right?
Right.
And so she gets really worked up whenever she gets angry. You know, like she doesn't like herself when she's angry. And
yeah, that's a weird one.
What's that?
Well, that whole kind of like, yeah, I mean, you can relate to that idea, I'm sure. I mean, I'm assuming you can.
Yeah, absolutely. But there's like this counterproductive layer that gets put onto it if you're dwelling on the fact that, I guess maybe that's just it. If you just dwell on the fact that you were angry, it doesn't seem like it's getting anywhere. But I'd rather just eliminate the whole response of feeling bad about something that you're doing, that you're generating. You know?
Yeah. I mean, it's like awkward sex. You know, it's like, am I really doing this? You know, and it's like, well, I guess I am. You know, and then, I mean, I kind of, yeah, and then I guess coming to grips, like, you know, well, just have awkward sex. You know, just get through it and try to find enjoyment in it. You know, as opposed to just saying, look, I'm just tired of having that. I'm gonna, you know, only have sex when it's not awkward, and then people will just keep on having it until it's not awkward anymore. You know, be open to the awkwardness. You know,
and screaming in the middle of it, "Fuck, this is awkward."
What's your dad's name again? This is awkward. Yep. So, I don't know. What a goofball conversation. Yeah. Well, I guess. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people will be able to relate to it. But kind of, what would you say about ages of, like, when I was in my 20s? I thought more like I can handle whatever pressures are on me. I can take on all sorts of pressures, where later on I was able to take on fewer pressures. I was half the man I used to be. And in certain respects I became weaker, where in other ways, you know, my endurance to get through, you know, dark times, basically to get through time, seemed to increase, which might sound kind of weird, meaning I didn't let the old things get to me the way they had gotten to me beforehand.
Right.
Earlier age. It's kind of weird. Like, I'll go on, I'll watch this Nicotine, and I'll watch Tool Time, and these guys are in their 20s studying philosophy, and I'm just thinking, okay, like, unless they're mega geniuses, they are going to have, they're going to maintain, like, they'll maintain certain ideals that I would say later on will necessarily be tested. And when I say ideals, I mean more like their expression, the way their expression about their ideas will come. You know, the actual idea will be opened up. It'll be fuzzed out. They won't be as strict and as poignant in the thought, is my prediction. You know, later on, it's almost like they're still maintaining, like their expression includes the youthful metabolism, and therefore their idealism echoes this metabolism. Kind of this sense of certainty would be equivalent to like maxing out your muscles in a certain way. I don't know if that makes any sense.
It totally does, yeah. Yeah, I think that it's unfortunate that our use of the word metabolize is restricted to just what our body does, because I think it's highly applicable to the way our thoughts are too. Like, I think that there is a chemical, our chemical body factors definitely shape the way our thoughts are produced, and they change as we get older, and it's kind of this, it's a progression that goes along with all of humanity as they do age and get older, you know?
Well, and how would you talk about reason or rationality? Like, I almost want to suggest that, you know, maybe more mature minds are more imaginative minds, or I shouldn't say they're more imaginative, but they're more nuanced or detailed in how it is they could express the imagination that they still have. Almost like the imagination's gone away, but the expression's enhanced.
As you get older, right?
As you get younger.
Oh, as you get younger.
No, as you get older.
So as you get older?
What?
As you get older?
Yeah, as you get older. Meaning, it's just like any other generalization about, oh, old people, you know? It's like, oh, look at The Simpsons. What's Grandpa doing? He's repeating stuff, you know? It's not necessarily even that people are deaf. It's more like maybe they're more open to the idea that what somebody is expressing is something other than what they heard. They're actually more sensitive to greater possibilities in their environment, and so it's not that they heard anything any less. It's just that they are considering that maybe what was expressed was something different than what was expressed. Which, compare that to when you're 8, or talking to an 8-year-old. How focused they are on having very sharp responses to things. I don't know why I'm bringing this topic up even, but I guess what I'm trying to do is like paint the idea that a lot of people, their psyches are dealing not just with like a lot of kind of the general biomedical outlook is, oh well, they're smoking or they're drinking or they're smoking weed or whatever, therefore their thoughts are like this, as opposed to saying, at this age in your life you're more likely to think and concern yourselves about these things, and therefore your thoughts are more likely to move in this direction as opposed to that direction. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Yeah. So you're like, in a way, you're saying that age is sort of is a determinant factor in thinking like drugs are.
Not like drugs are. Like I'm just basically saying, like, instead of looking at the medical or the cause and the effect of thinking, it's more like, okay, how about examples of metabolism? Almost like the whole idea, like, well, it's okay to be, a hippie protester, but I mean, I'm not quoting any, I don't know who I'm quoting, but it's the idea that, when you're young and you're in your 20s, you're going to be liberal, but, if you reach 50 and you're still a liberal, you've done something wrong, that type of approach.
Right, yeah, I think that's interesting. So it's like a biomedical explanation of thought evolution as you get older, right?
Well, I'm actually trying to, I guess talk more like of historical as opposed to biomedical, like to remove even metabolism and just talk about, raw experience, like, kind of the idea, like, well, you learn to paint by how many miles you put on your brush. In one respect you do, but other people, they can just, like prodigies, can knock stuff out. But I guess I'm trying to speak in normative, normal. I don't know. It's what an odd topic. Change the topic.
You can't get out of it. I mean, but it is a very like siphoning way of looking at things. But it also it's a nice alternative too. But it eliminates a lot of things too.
Kind of like if you're younger and more vibrant and you're more sexualized, let's say, and who you imagine you're speaking to or who you would like to speak to is somebody that is like that also, then your topics and your mannerisms are going to be different than if you're 80 and you're in an old folks home and you're thinking, well, I don't have much influence politically over my audience who are a bunch of, invalid 80-year-olds. It's almost like the way in which you approach the conversation, the expression itself, is a lot different depending on your audience, depending on perceived audience. And I'm just saying, like, a lot of that also is the speaker's assumption. So when I look at these young philosophers, I think, wow, they have something assumptive about their viewer that they have in mind, as opposed to getting to the point where they no longer have that assumptive approach. They're not trying to maintain anything. Not I shouldn't say maintain anything. They're not trying to maintain like the interactability, the predictability of their observers. I don't know. This is even.
Right?
What's that?
Because they've gotten older.
Yeah, because they have less experience or more experience than, depending on who you're referencing. Almost like I think younger people are more likely to give up because they're thinking maybe I don't know what I'm talking about, where I think older people are more likely to give up because they're thinking it's just not worth it.
Right, yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's different reasons, I guess, why people and how people express different things. Man, we're at 38 minutes. Okay, topic change.
Okay.
Should we talk about enlightenment?
No. I'll throw up. It'll make you throw up.
Should we talk about your vegetarianism?
If you want. That seems like a pretty old topic, too.
Well,
There's funny pictures on this video.
Well, I caught some heat from my video comments on that. Well, what's your ethic of vegetarianism? Why are you vegetarian, or are you vegetarian any longer?
I am. I do it mostly because it makes me feel, it's the best diet for me. I just don't feel well when I eat meat.
And when's the last time you've had a morsel of meat to eat?
Well, I eat fish.
Okay.
But other than that, a morsel even. I've had morsels here and there because, I'm not a Nazi by any means. I will eat food. I will eat meat if I'm in a certain situation where people have, I'm in somebody's home and they put a lot of effort into their cooking and it's a really big deal and it's, we're sharing this meal and it's this occasion and, I'm not going to ruin the situation by just, being like, I'm a vegetarian, I don't eat this. Like, it's such a party killer.
Right. So what about the suffering aspect?
Well, I think that us as humans cause a lot of suffering. We do it to our friends, we do it to ourselves, we do it to our families. We're just big suffering machines. We make suffering, we absorb suffering. Like, I don't think that just by becoming vegetarian that you're going to really influence the proportion of suffering that comes or is created in this world. But I do at the same time respect the idea. I certainly like to maintain a perspective of what all has gone into this food that I'm consuming. If it's, there's certain pain that gets involved in. I don't shy away from the whole process. I don't want to shy away from the whole process. I don't want guilt to be a factor in it. I'd much rather have the eating be a product of realism. Like, yeah, there was suffering that was involved in this, in this product that's right in front of me right now that I'm going to be eating, and there's all this other good stuff that's coming out of it too. So, just try to look at the whole emotional range, I guess.
So it's a matter of recognizing the suffering, but not like curtailing your behavior to minimize it.
Sure, yeah, but I don't even really think it's a necessity to recognize the suffering either. Like, fuck, we just need to eat, your story about being on the raft got very ethical and philosophical, and it's all nice to think about, I guess. And interesting to think about, but...
Oh, that old thing? I just threw that thing together.
And relevant, too. Like, it's good to have all this as exercise, Yeah. I wouldn't probably... Certainly being on a raft, I don't think I would put myself through all that gymnastics.
Yeah, okay, what do you think about this idea, topically? Like, to be stuck on one idea, like, I've really fought really hard to keep repeating an idea in terms of art, instead of going all over the map. I've suffered trying to be consistent, but what do you think about the idea of people that always have to, or they obligate themselves to think about things, using vegetarian as an example, like they've trained themselves so that when the topic of food comes up, that idea comes to mind, as opposed to allowing, like, to not allow themselves the freedom to maybe overlook that. Not overlook it, but just not think about it. You know what I mean?
Well, it makes me think of people that are like cultures that have set time spans when you're supposed to mourn for dead people, like a year or whatever, like every day for the next year you are to publicly and personally acknowledge the death of this person,
Uh-huh.
Yeah, that is a really fascinating, I'm fascinated by exercise though, I'm a fan. Like, and I think that all these are exercises, and I mean, I like exercising my body. I think there's a lot of benefit that goes into that, and I like the idea of disciplining yourself to maintain a certain thought pattern. And I guess it kind of goes back to that mind game thing that you were playing. Like, you know, you continually push yourself into this acceptance of this one idea, and then somewhere along the line, it's going to evolve into a thing upon itself. Like, it's going to become something on its own. So yeah, I respect all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, even deconstructive processes or destruction processes or this negation of mind, I felt like that was me not attempting to become enlightened, but in attempting to get over something that was seemingly unescapable in my thoughts that kept plaguing me. But, I bring up that topic for other people that are going through that as a historical fact, but I don't burden myself by repeating that process unless, like, I have new processes. When Jonas came to my bedside, he helped me meditate in a way that I had never meditated before, meaning I never had the circumstances to get to this point where I really had to test my relationship to my expression, in terms of, like, dark art, doing dark arts. That whole idea, I'd never focused on it, and he really helped me focus on that in terms of let's elevate you out of bad stuff. Like, why linger on the anger and the yell and the pain and the hurt? Like, get out of that, right? And I wanted out because I had had enough pain. Uh-oh. Oh, I thought you were gone.
No, I'm here. Yeah, but the way that Jonas was, it seemed, but the way, I don't know if he was doing this, but I got the impression that he was trying to push in positivity and hope that would push out the negativity, But it makes more sense, and this might seem shocking to you because I never empathize with you. It's because I understand this, I think this process of what you're doing is just like, of the Fight Club, of the beating yourself up, of absorbing all of absolutely every minute of the negativity, of the dark painting, of the horrible experience, so that it so consumes you that you have no other option but to do something different, and you have to be almost like drowned in the dark water before that change can occur,
Yeah.
And believe it or not, that's why I didn't send much sympathy in your direction, But, and that's why I'm always trying to, like, push the darkness on Ellen, too, I get that process. I mean, fuck, why do you think I stuck it out with Brian and Will for so long? That was my own personal, like, murking or drowning in the dark water experience.
Yeah, well, I could tell, but, especially with who?
With Will.
With Will, yeah. Well, that slow gravitation into a complete identification with and actually reaching an elation, like in knowing, like, I can sabotage my body and my life, and I can think any way that I want, and actually there is a certain freedom found in that complete, in that complete mindset, that paradigm, that horror, and it's such a harsh wall that people put up that justifies any and all unethical social behavior. But even in all that, you may have drank really heavily, but you didn't, like, try to destroy. You didn't get hooked on heavy drugs.
No.
So you were still practicing something of, you still had some particular self-guard instead of just saying, well, I'm right on the edge, might as well throw caution to the wind and just kind of say goodbye to my previous identity. And
yeah, absolutely, and I maintained a sense of vanity, absolutely, that kept me from going completely overboard. And I think that's okay.
Weak. No. Well, that's my point, though, is that people get to certain limits. Some people never, I don't think they ever try to get to a limit. They know what they want. They know how far they want to go. They have their idea of what's bad and what's good, and they've limited themselves, where other people nick away at their lives slowly and surely until they reach a maximum point. I mean, like this one guy, I think a lot of people join the military when they absolutely reach this critical point of what am I going to do, how am I going to do it, and it's almost instead of saying, wow, look at everything that I have that I could do, it's like, I'm going to give up on it and use this as my crutch. And I mean, I do the same thing in trying to figure out, ways to make a buck. Instead of just focusing on what it is I have. And then the other thing is knowing that you have a good thing and going against it. When you know you're in a good thing, a good relationship or a good environment, and you actively choose to go against it. I don't know whether or not you've experienced that or a lot of people have, but that's something that I've done. And I think,
I mean, lots of people thought that was a good thing, I mean, you did. You tried to push me into some kind of remembrance.
At what time?
Or the possibility of a goodness.
And what are you talking about?
Jesus.
Oh, how you're treating him and how that was and blah blah blah.
No, you just brought up the example of getting out of a relationship. That's a good thing,
Oh, right.
On many levels, I mean, he was great for me. And many people would assume that was a good thing. I'm a fool for leaving him, So I can identify with that.
Okay.
But,
yeah, and still going.
It's just, there's so many factors at play,
I know. I can't just fall on the idea of a good thing, like just because it's a good thing, keep it around, but it's also something that I had taken for granted, a lot of good things, and had purposely pushed good things away, in a way, because they were good, almost like I'm not done being down enough, or I'm not done with some course of mental conduct that I need to complete, and it's almost like the very act of going against that which is good is, to extreme measures was really, really important. And I'm at a point now where it's refracting and reverberating back at me. Meaning where I'm kind of coming out of grips, like I'm not caught up in the Jonas, idealism, but I'm not ignoring it by any stretch. I mean, even my painting Spiralic Women is, like, this to me is a way to stay away from painting really dark imagery.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I don't know, like I finally accepted a certain civil scope that had taken me so long to accept. But in one way I've been conquered by it, in another way it's like the easy way. But I've also found this as a yoga in trying to find what it is I enjoy that also is not going to, I don't know, it'd be really interesting to meet somebody that hated what it was I was doing or thought it was unethical or immoral. Maybe.
Like, as far as your paintings go?
Yeah, like, oh, that's an unclothed woman. That's unethical. Or,
that would give you so much gratification, wouldn't it?
well, it would tie something back. It would do something to me.
Find that person. That my life goal.
You already want me to hook up with the for a TV psychologist lady.
No, she wouldn't give you that. She wouldn't give you that gratification. She probably liked what you made.
So how is everything we've related, or we've talked about, related to Thailand? Like, or the culture of Thailand, would you say? Like, how could you tie it in? Get it? Tie it in? Very good. Sorry, duh.
Well, pick one. What's one thing that we talked about? Remind me. I'm drawing a blank.
Well, like, what do you think Thai idealism is, or relationships to age, in culture, or to metabolism, or, like, has anything that we brought up, would you say, does it violate, or is it something that, maybe needs reconsideration in the framework of a Thai culture? Or would you say no?
Yeah, nothing that parallels it in a nice way.
That Thai people are less likely to be vegetarian?
Oh, well, they're Buddhists, so they do have notions of suffering, and I guess that's probably one of the most relevant things is, and the whole idea of why Buddhism got invented was to eliminate suffering. So, all Thai people are Buddhists, so they have an intimate relationship with this idea of suffering. And in fact, yeah, I guess that is kind of interesting
because they also serve a lot of meat.
They do. Like, we do try to be vegetarians. Like, that is an idealism. But few people live it.
Few people live it.
Thai people have a lot. They have a different relationship to rules than we have. Rules in Thai perspectives are much more flexible. Where we have rules and they have these like concrete set identities, and we have a lot of guilt that gets built into them to help us maintain adherence to these rules. Where in Thai culture there's rules, but there's not the sense of guilt that's linked into them, and so people have a lot more maneuverability and flexibility within them. Like if it works for you, then do it. If it doesn't work for you, then don't do it.
Do you think that relates to the sexual culture? The way you reference the women relating to men in terms of sex over there, does that relate to that at all, or does that not relate to that at all?
I don't really think I can talk about that. I don't know so much about that, to be honest.
Oh, okay.
Because I haven't really talked to Thai women about sex ever, really.
Oh, okay. Just kind of curious, because trying to mix conversations and trying to get a justification as to whether or not their perspective of sexual activity is, if it's rooted in that kind of guilt-free, oh, it works for me approach, as opposed to a guilted approach.
Well, it's so complicated.
Okay.
Because there's another layer that gets thrown in on this is individual versus community. And on a real general level, Westerners are a very individually rooted sense of identity. Like, there's me, and then there's you, and we're very separate, and we're these unique identities. But in Thai culture and in Asian culture in general, it's a much more community identity. Your community defines the individual, So there's this sense of who you are is actually not who the community is. That's how we are feeling. Like it's not how you are doing. It's how is the community feeling. So in sex, I could hypothesize that this idea of what works for me is a very Western idea, because that's a very self-centered perspective. But but in an Asian perspective, like, you're going to have sex because it's going to help your partner out. Like, this is something that you can do to make your husband feel good, so you're going to do it. Because you're we. This is a community. This is a selfless identity. But like I said, it's so extremely complicated. Especially this idea of community versus individuality. Like, I'm just now, starting 7 years into this, getting an idea of the depth of what that means, and it's all because I'm such an individual, me-oriented person that it's so hard for me to think about community and to hold that idea as a idea, like, to the source where it animates and chooses.
Well, didn't you feel that community in religion in college or in your past? Or, wasn't that what was trying to be reinforced about religion?
No, it's not the same. It really isn't the same thing, because the religion still, and even the community that's built into religion is still this separate
idea
idea, you know, like you're still a bunch of individuals within the community. Like we never, as Westerners, we never, and this is what I'm learning, is we never ever drop this idea of individuality. Like there's always me and everything's separate, you know. From what I'm getting from being here in Asia is that they're, like the separation, I'm just now beginning to understand that they're not having that separation, what that actually means. And it's a completely profound and life-altering way of engaging with your world. And it's nothing that I've ever experienced in Western culture, anywhere. There's nowhere I can point to. Unless it's somebody like, we view them as being fools, like people in cults, you know, like we call them brainwashed, you know, because this is how deeply ingrained our sense of individualness is, because we see people that are heavily involved in religions or cults. We call them, you know, that they've lost their minds, you know, that they've lost their ability to choose. You know, we describe them in all these negative terms. And we often look at Asian cultures in that same way, you know, like, oh, they're just a bunch of robots, like they're all just doing the same thing, you know, and dress the same way, and, you know, they all look the same, and they have no, you know, so, do you see what I'm getting at?
Yeah. No, I do. Just you're mentioning that kind of clarified, opened something up. But so we're over an hour. I mean, I'll be able to reduce it down to a smaller amount, but basically we're about done. Is there any capstone thoughts on anything?
No, turn it off.
just turn the damn thing off, would you? Yeah, we don't need any tail end to anything. Just turn it off.
No, I don't have anything. Do you have anything?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't think I have anything. Okay, well then, you know, I don't know. I wish there was a nice way to go. The theme of this conversation was something almost like us talking when we're not knowing that we're being filmed.
I actually didn't hold that within my forehead.
You didn't?
I felt like talking to you, yeah.
Oh, okay. Well, at least one of us was fooled, sucker. Right on. Okay, I will, you know, try to get it on. It'll take me a while to process it, but okay, I'm going to hang up. Everybody, say hi to Castriano Old Brave. Okay.
Cast Iron Brave. You gotta say my name right, at least.
Cast Iron Brave. Man, it's time for a pain pill.